This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to this week's episode of Killer Innovations, a show about creativity, innovation, and design. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are both live on Zoom, and we are also live on Facebook Live. So check it out. You can go to killerinnovations.com/live each Sunday and listen to us. You can get the audio stream from BizTalk Radio, or you can check us out on video and watch the show as it's being put together live, going across 30 stations here in the U.S. The show is available as a podcast, comes out each Tuesday. You can sign up over on Google Play or over on iTunes, or you can simply just check out all of the show histories, past show archives over at killerinnovations.com. Show goes back 12 years, and yes, you can go back all the way to March 2005 and find the entire archive, including the very first show, which was me sitting in a bathroom at a Marriott resort in Phoenix, Arizona, as part of an early test. I don't think I quite would have predicted that I would still be doing the show 12 years later. But the reason I do this show is, and we make the content all available for free, is my way of paying it forward. So early in my career, when I got my first job, my first mentor was a guy by the name of Bob Davis. Bob is now retired and lives in Arizona. But Bob hired this young kid who didn't know squat, who thought he knew everything, and really put together a program to teach me not just, the fact that I was a software engineer, but really around a full package of being someone who really knew and understood the business side of it. So I actually went to 3 companies with Bob as part of a team. And the investment and the impact that he had in my career, I can't even put a value on it. Years later, I'd asked Bob, I said, so how do I pay you back? And his answer was he laughed. He says, hey, you can't pay me back. That was an investment that I wanted to make in you as an individual. And he says the best way that I could return it to him would be to pay it forward, find others that I could mentor or share my expertise and my knowledge with. And that's why we do this podcast. We do this podcast really to equip you with knowledge and tools and skills and lessons learned both from me and our guests, such that you can go out and have that really 10x impact on your own on your success. Now, mentors never really there's some mentors that are out there that try to say, oh, we're the guys that did this or did that. Mentors really are behind the scenes. It's really about giving the person enough experience and enough perspective to actually have an impact on what it is they do and such. So, Bob has never stood up and taken credit for what I've been able to do in my career, but I know in my head and in my heart the impact that Bob had on my career. And the reason we do this show and the reason we've been doing this podcast for 12 years is to help you. And so today's show, normally we would have a guest, or probably 3/4 of the time we have a guest. Today, however, we don't have a guest. What I'm doing is I'm actually taking questions from you and answering them as you submit them. So we've had a number of them come in on by email, and I'm going to work through these, probably one question for each of the 4 segments. I've only, and if you are online, if you're watching on Facebook Live, go ahead. Just post it as a comment. I'll see it here in the studio, and we'll try to weave that in. Okay? So let's go ahead and get started. So the first question is a comment really about an older post over on the blog over at philmckinney.com. And if you're not familiar, killerinnovations.com is where all the show, podcast, archive, and all that is over at killerinnovations.com. I also post every week on my personal blog over at philmckinney.com. Both of them kind of have a similar topic. It's all around innovation and creativity and leadership and management and building startups, etc. But this person in particular is commenting on a post that actually is not a new one. It actually was back a little ways. I think it's gotten reposted in the last week or so. And it's really about the title of it, if I recall it correctly, is Stupid Wins. And it's really around the fact that if you are, working on new ideas, if someone isn't telling you that your idea is stupid, then you're not trying hard enough. And it's really about that ability to look at ideas in a different way. And so this question and I'm just going to read it quoted here. It says, I loved your post about feeling stupid. You give the best advice that is grounded in your immense amount of experience. Well, thank you very much for that comment. When you say you've helped people unlock their confidence, how have you done that? One of the challenges in the innovation game is around confidence. Do you have the confidence to go out and actually try something? And what happens is we get kind of hung up on this fear of failure, this fear that I'm going to go out and try something and I'm just going to totally just flub it and just totally bomb. And therefore, people are going to see that I failed. And oh my gosh, I'm not as, all together and I'm not as all with it as I make it out to appear. We all tend to get pretty worried about what other people think about us, about our ideas or our successes. And so part of building confidence is giving people a comfortable environment to try things and then letting it fail, because not everything's going to work out. You are going to fail. And as a result of that, though, you learn through the process of failure that it's not deadly. You're going to still wake up the next morning. You're still going to go on and do that next idea. Look, in my case, I did 12 startups. That's right, 12 startups before I became part of the original management team at Telligent, when there was only 5 of us in a room in the early days. And we grew that. We took it to IPO, and I was able to, make some money on that. So you had to go through, 12 times of not working out and totally bombing out, shutting down businesses, doing fire sales to try to, keep some parts of it alive. I mean, it's just ugly. But failure is part of that process. And through those 12, failures, I learned that it's not deadly, that we are going, that you can survive those and actually do things and be quite successful at it. So what's this whole concept of what I mean by stupid? And what I mean by stupid is that, it's looking at those ideas and not being concerned about what everybody else thinks. And what I have found in particular is the things that look the most stupid as far as ideas are the ones that are actually the more interesting ones, the ones that are going to be more successful. Now, any and all ideas can fail. There's no guarantee that an idea right out of the gate is going to be the big win. You got to work them. You got to work at them for that extended period of time. But in this case of stupid wins, it really is if you get a lot of people pushing back saying, oh, that's a stupid idea, or I've tried that before, or that'll never work, what I refer to as the innovation antibodies, those are the ones that I tend to like and the ones I'll tend to want to pay attention to. But at the same time, confidence comes from not the stupid, quote, finding the stupid wins. Confidence comes from your willingness to go do something. Take the risk that it might fail and go in and do that. If you got an idea and you really think it's going to be turning into something great, whether it's a new restaurant or I just did an interview for a podcast over in Europe. It was innovation around the construction industry. And I did an interview for them. And they were talking about the failures of startup businesses in the architecture and construction field. Look, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. It is about this issue of you got to get out and do it. Sitting around and thinking about it, I've got this great idea and I've got my idea notebook all filled out, doesn't mean anything until you go out and you actually do it. Actually build that business, try it out, and get out there and see if it sticks. Now, you don't want to be foolish with that. You want to make sure you do good planning, you do thought behind it. You do good idea validation. And look, you can go back through the entire archive of the show, and there's podcasts on how do you focus your idea, how do you ideate, how do you rank it, how do you execute it. So don't be out there just doing random stuff. Learn and really understand the best practices of how to take that idea and really turn it into something meaningful. And so the confidence comes from, in my case, teaching people and exposing people to the fact that everybody's had failures. I've had 12. There's others that have had even more failures before they ultimately hit the success. Failure is not deadly, and you need that confidence to actually get out there and try that. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to pick up some of your other questions, and we'll answer those. I've got a couple more here that have come in by email. We've got a couple up out here on Facebook. So stay tuned. You're not going to want to go anywhere. We're going to see where this show goes today with answering your questions. You can ask anything you want. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network, and we're going to be right back after we pay a few bills with this commercial break.
BizTalkRadio.com.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to this episode of Killer Innovations. This is segment 2. This week, we do not have a guest. We are actually running the show in a format that we call Ask Phil. You can ask me any questions you might have. Join us on Facebook Live, or you can also join over on Zoom. Go to killerinnovations.com/live, and you have a whole variety of options to connect with the show live. And we're actually live most Sundays. Some Sundays we do pre-record, but those Sundays that I am live in the studio, you can watch us every week. And actually, you can inject your questions at any time. So I'm going to answer a question that came in during the commercial break just a few minutes ago from Patricia. And the question was really around the definition of disruptive innovation and the fact that everybody today now calls everything a disruptive innovation. And is that being overused? And things that you're describing as disruptive innovation today was just an innovation a year ago. And my thoughts on that. So one, Patricia, thank you for the question. Two, I think you are right. I think there is this overuse of disruptive to describe innovation. Not all innovations have to be that big breakthrough, the thing that just is totally game-changing. There's incremental innovations, which is something that already exists today, and you do a slight improvement on it. You make it more efficient, you make it smaller, you make it less expensively. Those are what I would classify as incremental innovations. Disruptive innovations means you're in effect disrupting something that already exists. You're totally transforming a marketplace around something with some new novel solution or innovation, but that basically takes out a major swath of the marketplace. Okay. One example of a disruptive innovation, people can argue with me whether they agree or don't, but one disruptive innovation is the iPhone. If you think about it, before, the big leaders in the smartphone business were companies like Nokia or Motorola. Apple comes out with the iPhone. They weren't the first ones to come out with a smartphone. There were smartphones before, such as the Palm and others. But Apple really took the lessons learned from all the other smartphones, created a disruptive product. And look what happened to the companies that were the established players at the time. Nokia sold off its phone business to Microsoft. Motorola got acquired by Google. And so those are examples where you come in, and when you truly disrupt, you're truly just transforming the industry. You're fundamentally changing the customer's experience or expectation in some fundamental way. You're changing the economics in some fundamental way. You're changing the competitive positioning in a fundamental way. When you bring those together, that is what I would classify as a disruptive innovation. So customer experience, the economics of the industry, and the competitive landscape. If you can transform all three of those in a meaningful and significant way, that's a disruption. Now today, most people use the word disruptive innovation to really kind of oversell their idea. Oh, I've got this great disruptive innovation that's going to just change the marketplace. No. Yeah, disruptive innovations don't come around as a dime a dozen. It's pretty hard to hit all three of those criteria of customers' experience and expectation, the economics of an industry, and the competitive landscape. If you can't do all three, then it's really not a disruption. Maybe you improve the customer experience, and maybe you become a little less more expensive, and that becomes part of the economics. But if you can hit all three of those, that's truly disruptive. And so back to the point, though, of this situation where people are just way overhyping it, way overselling this whole definition of disruptive innovation. It's people thinking that I've got to use the word disruptive or people are not going to pay attention to me. Like, yeah, if I don't use disruptive, a venture capitalist isn't going to invest with me. If I don't use disruptive, the CEO is not going to approve my budget to go sell it. Be careful, because if you oversell the idea, people on the other side of the table, they're going to read right through that, and you lose all credibility, right? Again, not every innovation needs to be disruptive. You need to be successful. Let's say you're inside of a large organization and you're part of an innovation team, or you want to, be somebody who's submitting those ideas to drive innovation within your company. Not every one of your ideas needs to be disruptive. You can get some really quick early wins by just picking some incremental ones, some things that are truly transformative, like how do you take that cost out to where your manufacturing cost is only half what it was before? Not disruptive, could be disruptive, not really, but just say 50% less cost to manufacture, you can have a big impact on the profitability of the business. That's an incremental innovation, but high impact. And let me tell you, you come up with that kind of an idea, the CEO better be all over giving you a big fat bonus. So, don't get stuck on the fact that everything has to be innovation. And disruptive innovation is specifically just this overhyped situation. Now, the name of this show is Killer Innovation. So what's the difference between a disruptive innovation and a killer innovation? The difference between a disruptive innovation and a killer innovation is this barrier protection. Have you developed something that is unique, proprietary, or you have some unique ability to deliver it, that the attempt of anybody to come in and copy it is hard. It would be hard for someone to come in, which means you get some level of exclusivity. And I'm not talking about patents. I'm really talking about this ability to create a barrier to entry so that anybody else coming in would have a very hard time in trying to be competitive to you. And so the difference between disruptive is, again, customers' experience expectation, the economics of the industry, or the competitive positioning. The additional level for a killer innovation is one that you've created some form of barrier to entry. Now, the iPhone was disruptive. The iPhone was not a killer innovation. Because look, Samsung came out and actually cranked out a phone. They actually have more phone sales, more phones in the market than even Apple does in the iPhone. So they had a barrier for some period of time, but it quickly got subverted by Samsung. So that's an example where an iPhone was a disruptive innovation, not a killer innovation. And killer innovations are even far rarer than disruptive innovations. And the purpose of this show is really to give you the skills, knowledge, and expertise so that you can take your innovation, and how do you, what we call plus it? How do you make it bigger, better, badder, so that you can put it into that disruptive category or achieve the ultimate, which is to make it a killer innovation. So, Patricia, hopefully that answered your question on disruptive innovation and how I think about it, and how I think about it from an incremental, disruptive, or killer innovation, and what the criteria is. I'll put all these in a show note so you can check that out over at killerinnovations.com. So we're going to take another quick commercial break here. We've got more questions coming in. We'll answer those in the upcoming segments. We do have a big announcement here that I'll announce at the beginning of segment 3, so stay tuned for that. And we'll be right back here at Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. And let's go pay a few bills.
BizTalkRadio.com.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations, a show about creativity, innovation, and design. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. Before we get into this segment and continuing answering your questions, a little bit of an announcement we're making. We have, for the very first time, brought on a show sponsor. That's right. Now you're going to say, hold on here, Phil. The show's been going on for 12 years. You've never had a show sponsor. Yep, you're correct. This is the first time that we are doing a show sponsorship. And I'm going to explain why here in a minute. But a common question that I get from you is the help in trying to locate top talent. People who can join with you to take your idea and turn it into something, meaningful, really significant. Now, like we've all tried those outsourcing sites to try to post a project or try to hire a part-time, graphic designer for something. I don't know about you, but those have just never worked out for me. I just have been always disappointed. But our sponsor, TopTal, is different. Now, for starters, they screen, and I mean they really screen, the technical and design talent that's part of the TopTal network of resources. In fact, they're so stringent on that screening that only 3% of those individuals that apply ever get accepted. But they also do more than just screen on the technical talent. They also screen on communications and personality. Think of them as almost like a matchmaker. They understand about you, they understand their talent, and they're really doing a match job. It's not you just posting something onto some online site. Now, companies that use TopTal range from large companies such as Pfizer and JP Morgan, all the way down to small startups like Airbnb and Zendesk. Now, with the sponsorship from TopTal, they've put together a program for listeners of this show to try TopTal at zero risk. And I mean zero risk. So try it out, start a project with TopTal, let it go for 2 weeks. If at the end of 2 weeks you don't think they're absolutely killing it, you get 100% of your money back. And in addition, you get to keep the deliverables that were developed during those 2 weeks. So there's no risk involved here. So go over to toptal.com/Phil and start your project. Or better yet, just drop me an email at phil@killerinnovations.com and I'll make the personal introduction. That way you'll get the VIP treatment, trust me. So why am I letting TopTal sponsor the show? A couple reasons. One is first, my mission of doing this show and this podcast and why I've been doing this for 12 years is really to give you the knowledge, skills, and tools to help you take your idea and turn it into an innovation. Take it to market. Bring something new into the space. And having access to top technical talent is absolutely critical. And I like TopTal. I've met the CEOs, I've met a bunch of their teams, I've talked to their customers, I've talked to their technical talent, and their technical talent is truly top-notch. Now, second, taking on a sponsor helps cover the cost of producing the show. Now, I've been covering the cost of this show out of my pocket for 12 years. But by accepting the sponsorships, this allows me to put more money into my nonprofits. Now, if you've been a long-time listener of this show, you know that any money, 100% of my author royalties, any money I make on this side work, speaking engagements, mentoring, coaching, fees that I charge, all that money goes into the nonprofits, hackingautism.org and pioneer.education. So this isn't about money, but when I can bring on these sponsorships, it actually frees up money that I can give and put into the nonprofits. So what are you waiting for? As I've said 1,000 times before, ideas without execution are a hobby, and true innovators are not in the hobby business. So go over to toptal.com/Phil and start a project. And again, if you want that introduction, just drop me an email at phil@killerinnovations.com. I'll make that introduction, and you'll truly get the VIP treatment. So let's go on with the show. Another question we have is what is your advice for large companies who are not nimble enough to embrace innovation? How can they restructure to ensure they not only continue to innovate, but also be a sponge that soaks up potential competitors who threaten to disrupt from below? Great question. So I'll start off with the first one. What is your best advice for large companies who are not nimble enough to embrace innovation? And this is a challenge for a lot of large companies, right? When I was CTO at Hewlett Packard, when I left, we were 120 billion in revenue, 240,000 employees. R&D spend was about $4 billion. Some big numbers. But inside large organizations, you're designed for scale, not for mid-course corrections and trying to change directions. In the case of HP, when I was first moved into my role, my CTO role, part of that was to create what was called the Innovation Program Office, separately funded team, separately funded organization, whose job was to go off and create the new sources for revenue and growth. The challenge is when you're 120 billion and Wall Street's expecting you to grow 6 to 8% a year, that correlates to you have to create about a Fortune 75 company every year. So you get to January 1, start over with $0. You got to grow another Fortune 75 company. Into the next year, you got to grow that and generate another Fortune 75. It's this death march of Wall Street. So the problem is a lot of times you'll come up with really great ideas inside large organizations, but they're not going to grow fast enough. They're not going to have a potential to drive a big enough number. I mean, the joke inside HP used to be that if your idea wasn't $1 billion in 3 years, it wasn't interesting. Versus you said, hey, I got a really great idea that's going to be $100 million. Out on the street, you'd have investors clamoring to put money into your deal. So scale becomes kind of the enemy in this whole process. So in some cases, you innovate by acquisition. So when companies get to a certain stage, they've got real product, they're driving real revenue, where the fog of the idea is kind of going away and you can actually see the value of the idea from the standpoint of product or service and customers and revenue and growth, then you step in and acquire. Yes, you acquire at a higher cost. You acquire at a premium, but that tends to be where a lot of large companies fall into. It's not by innovate by idea, but innovate by acquisition. Now, that's a sad testament. But I have yet to find, the perfect model inside of large organizations. Now, in the fact of HP just recently announced the relaunch of the HP Venture Fund. So they're actually going to be investing in early stage companies. Andrew Balwell, who I know very, very well, he and I worked together on a number of projects during my 10 years at HP. Andrew's now leading the venture fund at HP. And look, there's other corporate, Intel Ventures, Comcast Ventures, Liberty Global Ventures, Qualcomm Ventures. All the corporate entities are all creating their own venture funds. This is a way to kind of keep those ideas, those really great ideas, outside the four walls. Because if you bring them inside the four walls, odds are you're going to kill it. You're going to smother it. You're going to overwork it, and you're just going to crush it out. Another example in my history is we did the acquisition of Voodoo. Top-notch gaming company. Raul Sood, who's now the CEO at Unicorn, was the founder, him and his brother. We acquired it. It was one of the first acquisitions HP did in what we call the Personal Systems Group, the PC division. And wouldn't you know it, like in 3 years, we just totally crushed it. We had more people who wanted to help than there was total employees of Voodoo at the time. Voodoo was maybe 30 people. And so bringing it in-house at such a small size and such a small scale was a mistake. We'd been better off to invest in them and keep them external, give them access to the benefits and resources of HP rather than smothering them to death. So that's the balance you got to think about when you start thinking about large companies and how you're going to drive this innovation agenda. And what does that really mean from the standpoint of how do you do that successfully? And believe me, I've seen it work. It's not all failures. But large companies, this is their big struggle. It's really how do they do that? And the best way to soak it up for the ones from underneath is these venture arms tend to have done pretty well. Intel's done very well. Liberty Global's done very well. Comcast, Qualcomm, Intel, Rogers Ventures, all have done very well. So that would be my advice at this point. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to continue on answering questions, both from the live feed coming in on Facebook, but also ones that I've gotten by email. So stay right there. You're not going to want to miss the next question we got coming in from one of you, the listeners. We'll be right back. This is Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
BizTalkRadio.com.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to the fourth and final segment of the Killer Innovation Show here on BizTalk Radio. This is a show about creativity, innovation, and design, and I'm your host, Phil McKinney, coming to you live from my studio here in northern Colorado, and coming and spending time with you each and every Sunday. So join in. You can join in and watch the show live on our video feed, so you can actually watch us here in the studio, both on Zoom and over on Facebook Live. So just to stop by killerinnovations.com/live and participate. You can ask your questions of either me or my guests in the show itself. So we've been answering questions coming in both on the Facebook Live feed and ones that I've gotten via email. So let's continue on with that. So this question really ties into a blog post that I wrote some time ago on what I called the 9 daily exercises that I do to keep my creative muscle in shape. And you've heard me rant on this for a little bit in the past, where all of us are creative. We more than likely have had it beaten out of us through our educational system. And there's a whole series of shows in the past. You can go back and listen if you want to hear me rant on the educational system and how it actually teaches us to conform and to be like everybody else and fit in, rather than letting our natural creativity emerge. So I'm not going to get into that rant. That would be an entire show by itself. So in this blog post, I shared 9 exercises that I do. I do these personally to keep my creative muscle in shape. Just like in a marathon, you're not going to get up off the couch and go run the marathon. You're going to get up off that couch, you'll walk. The next day you may walk a little further. The third day you may actually try to pick the pace up. A week later you might be jogging. A month later you actually may be running. Right? You got to build up your muscles to do that. The same applies to your creative muscle. You have to get up and exercise it. So the 9 daily exercises that I do to keep my creative muscle in shape. One is using my non-dominant hand to sketch and draw. Now I'm an architecture guy. My original major in college was architecture. I switched to computer software, but I'm a visual guy. I'm graphically oriented. And I'm right-handed. And what I have found is by forcing myself to sketch and draw with my left hand, it uses muscles, it uses brain power. I have to be much more focused on what it is I'm drawing or sketching than I would normally with my right hand, and it really exercises my brain. That's why I do it. 2 is complete an incomplete sketch. Now, in some cases, I may look at sketches and drawings that I've done years ago, where I've kind of forgot what the inspiration is, and now I'm going to pick up that sketch or drawing and I'm going to finish it. This is kind of like finishing up someone else's hobby project and finishing it without knowing what the original vision was. And this really exercises your ability to look at an object and add your own to it, transform it, change it, make it something completely differently. The third is brain teasers. I'm a big Sudoku guy. I'm an engineer, so that isn't surprising. And My wife, on the other hand, is Lumosity. That's what she uses to kind of exercise her brain, and just kind of cause it to really have to work each and every day. So I'm a big believer. I use brain teasers as kind of a warm-up exercise. Like if you're a runner or a jogger, you're going to get up and stretch. You're going to, stretch your muscles, get warmed up a little bit before you kind of head out for that run. Same here with the brain. You got to exercise that brain. You got to warm it up before you really, expect it to produce. And so in this case, for me, brain teasers. Abandon social norms. This is a hard one, right? Look, you start off in school as in a kindergarten, right? You don't understand the social norms, right? Every kid's off doing crazy stuff. Part of kindergarten class is to get you to sit in your chair and listen and follow directions and etc. So that when you get into first grade, the classroom's not absolute chaos. Well, the process though of going through K through 12 is we teach this conformity, social norms. Some cases you have to break with the social norms, right? I've seen, social norms like, walking around barefoot in an office, right? Just out of just seeing what people would say and what the reaction would be. The way you, interact, things you would say in social settings. Not to be rude or crude, but the days of you walking by someone and saying, "Hey, how are you?" and the other person going, "Yep, fine," and everybody just kind of goes by. That's kind of social norm versus, "Hey, how's everything going?" You're going, "Hey, not so great. I've got this challenge. Hey, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that?" Etc. And so that became part of this whole process of changing and changing from the social norms. The other is play often. Got to play games. You got to play, have fun. Board games are a big thing in our family. We love to do that. 6, complete simple creative challenges, right? I'm a sketcher, I'm a drawer, so I really like to work on things. There's also like this one challenge, which is write a 6-word story that, you got to tell the entire story in 6 words. I shared that in a previous podcast. You can look that up. The other is change it up. Look at things differently. Change it up also includes don't drive the same way to work every day. Drive a completely different way. Don't get out of your patterns. Patterns and ruts really do become a problem. It's not great to create restrictions. Put on your own constraints. I'm going to come up with 50 ideas in 10 minutes. Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot of ideas in a short period of time. But create some constraints that really force you to do something in a unique and different way. And the other is change your location. Don't always do it in the same place. Don't sit at the same desk. Don't do it in your house. Go out and try something new. So this gives you a little bit of insight into, again, this was a blog post that I wrote some time ago called The 9 Daily Exercises. I'll put a link into it in the show notes so you can check it out there. As we wrap up the show, if you want to get connected with Killer Innovations, go over to killerinnovations.com. You can sign up for the newsletter there. That'll keep you up to date. You'll actually get early access to the show as we release it each and every week. Also, check us out. Join us live. Love to have you as part of the show asking your questions. With that, we're going to wrap this up for this week. Appreciate you joining us. You've been listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network. And we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
The opinions you hear on Biz Talk Radio are those of the hosts, callers, and guests, and do not necessarily reflect those of this station, Biz Talk Radio, its management, or advertisers. The information on Biz Talk Radio does not constitute a recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or service. If you have any questions about Biz Talk Radio, contact us at 817-274-1609 or at biztalkradio.com. biztalkradio.com.